if you were paying attention. John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, Sports 610, Houston Radio, and also, of course, just an amazing, lifelong Hall of Famer himself, joins us on 365 Sports. Is there any way that DeMeco Ryans does not win Coach of the Year?
I believe it is, David. You can go where I write all my columns, sportsradio610.com, where there's no paywall, and I've got a column about that. And there's Dan Campbell, who's doing a fabulous job in Detroit, but that fabulous job began last year. So people picked him to win the division, and the people picked the Texans to have the second worst team in the league to Arizona. Now, if the Texans beat Jacksonville in what is the biggest game in this city since the playoffs after the 2019 season when they beat Buffalo in a wild card game, if they can win, they'll have swept the Jaguars by the same record, and that'll give them a one-game lead. And neither team has a really tough schedule after this game. Jacksonville wins, they've got a two-game lead, so they're going to win the division. I think that they've already won 6, which is what I predicted for the season. But I think if nobody has done a better coaching job with less than he has. And Nick Caserio should win Executive of the Year for drafting C.J. Stroud and hiring DeMeco Ryans. I've got a column I'm working on for tomorrow in which one of the owners, Hannah McNair, says there should be a comeback owner of the year award, and her husband, Cal, should win it. And Bobby Slowick, their offensive coordinator, has a chance to win assistant coach of the year. And of course, Stroud's going to run away with offensive rookie of the year. And Will Anderson, who's played very well, is in the running for defensive rookie of the year. And the only one I'm sure they're not going to win is MVP, even though there's a lot of talk about Stroud being MVP in Vegas. I think he's 6th right now.
John, I was going to ask you about Cal McNair and that comeback owner of the year. Who was it that got in his, is it Nick Caserio that pointed him back in the right direction and away from the team chaplain making personnel decisions and all kind of the other weird things that went on for a couple of years there in Houston?
Well, Easterby was not the chaplain. That's not what he was hired to do. He had worked his way up in the organization where he was number 2 to Nick Caserio, his good friend from New England. And back at the league meetings in March when I was working for Gallery Sports, I sat down with the McNairs for about an hour and talked about the more prominent role Hannah McNair was playing now and how her husband welcomed it. And I think she's the one that got him to see the light on getting rid of Jack Easterby. And once they fired him during last season, it was like a dark cloud was lifted off this franchise. And then when they hired Ryans, where he'd been a captain and one of the most popular players in team history, people were pumped in to get Stroud and Will Anderson with the second and third picks. And then to see the fruits of the labor happen a year before anybody could have imagined. You know, right now the McNairs are loving life because no longer do they, every time they walk through a door, they wonder what controversies on the other side.
John, a monster rating, nearly 30 million people watching Monday Night Football, the highest mark in a really, really long time. But the Eagles get the win, now 9-1 after the 21-17 victory. Patrick Mahomes didn't get a lot of help from his guys, as was one of the big storylines there. But what were your thoughts on that massive Monday night matchup?
That Kansas City lost that game by dropping too many passes, 26 for the season, by far the league high. And I feel bad for Mahomes. Philadelphia's got the best record. Baltimore has the second best record. I want Baltimore to win the Super Bowl because I picked the Ravens before the season. But to me, there's not a great team. There's not a dominant team. Right now, it looks like Philadelphia and San Francisco in the NFC and Baltimore and Kansas City in the AFC. It's kind of more of the same. But keep in mind, other than New England, no team has gone to the Super Bowl and lost and gone back the next year since the Steelers in the 90s for whatever reason. And the 49ers have been right on the cusp. Might have gone in and won it last year if they hadn't had all those quarterback issues in the playoffs. So the 49ers are very hungry too. I think and they're going to play. Philadelphia and San Francisco, I believe, will play in 2 weeks, and that could be a Super Bowl an NFC Championship game preview.
John, there are some crazy trends in the NFL. There was that trend, I don't even know if it's still alive, that a certain amount of teams, like half or so, that made the playoffs the next year didn't, and happened for some like 20 years or so. And the one you mentioned about a Super Bowl loser, that just like, it's hard to fathom that it lasts this long.
What about champions of the NFC East? How long has that gone on since there's been a different one every year? And right now it's pointing to the Eagles, although Cowboys are still in the running to win the division. They have the Eagles at home, but even if Philadelphia only loses one more game, and the Eagles could lose more than one, of course, they're playing close games. They have not dominated. The 49ers, except for that 3-week, I don't know what happened when that 3-game losing streak, they dominated before, they've dominated after. Clearly, they are the two best teams with the Cowboys close behind. But I think, every time I watch the Cowboys in the big game, and they have clock issues, they have game management issues that you don't see Eagles and 49ers having. If you're a Cowboys fan, and I know you got a lot of them listening, you've got to be scared when big games come around.
John, that's true. That is a very true thing. If we were talking about it during the break about the Cowboys, and Jerry runs a really good organization, not a great one, right? If you were to pick which organization is doing everything right now, who would it be?
I would think a team that sticks with its head coach, a team that does well free agency in the draft. San Francisco, it hasn't paid off in the Super Bowls like it did under Bill Walsh and George Seifert, that every year they add pieces, and you're like, how did they do that? Philadelphia's got it going on with Nick Sirianni. Howie Roseman makes deals. You're like, how in the world did he pull that off? How did he put the A.J. Brown and now Jalen Hurts under his salary cap, and they haven't had to get rid of players? And the Cowboys, they don't have a bad organization. They got a good organization. Jerry's not quick on the trigger with coaches like a lot of people seem to think he is. And he's not firing Mike McCarthy into another 12-win playoff season, I don't believe, because even Jerry, when he's laying in bed at night, has got to know the 49ers and the Eagles are better than the Cowboys. And he's got to be scared before big games, too. You saw the problems the Cowboys had at the end of the Philadelphia game, like that in that San Francisco playoff loss 2 years ago. You can't keep having those issues. One of the reasons I like DeMeco Ryan so much, every clock management, every flag that he throws to challenge, he's done right on everything. Does an outstanding job on that. And it's hard enough to win when you have all the clock and game management issues taken care of. But then when those are compounding what happens on the field, you're not going to get lucky and go to the Super Bowl. So I would say Kansas City, San Francisco, and Baltimore perennially does. They're out of it when Lamar Jackson's been hurt the last 2 years. But I would say Philly, San Francisco, and Kansas City, because they perennially are the best teams in the NFL.
Speaking of Baltimore in that game this past weekend, how about Deshaun Watson now out for the year?
He had done squat except for one quarter. He's been paid $92 million for 12 games. And I saw accumulation of his stats, and they're terrible. But he was 14 of 14 in his last half. He helped them win. But the fact of the matter is, they can run the ball, and Kevin Stefanski is doing a great job. He loses Nick Chubb, best running back in the NFL. They still run the ball because it's their philosophy. Jerome Ford, don't know where he came from. He's been good. They re-signed Kareem Hunt. Their offensive line is terrific. Their defense is great. This time of year, when the weather starts to get bad and you can run and play defense, you can win. And that's what they do. Cincinnati can't do that. They can't run. They can't play defense. They're destined for last place. Pittsburgh can run and play defense. Now they hope to be able to throw the ball a little better since they fired Matt Canada, their offensive coordinator. But you've got to be prepared for the elements, and the Browns are, and a lot of teams aren't.
John, last thing, I don't put you on the spot, but Baylor plays their last game. Thank goodness. Season ends at 3-9, or maybe a miraculous 4-8 if they can beat West Virginia. Do you feel like Dave Aranda will be their head coach on Sunday morning?
is what I've said to you guys and other shows I do when asked about Aranda. Did Dave Aranda get stupid in 2 years? No, he won when he had better players. He didn't get with the NIL program like other schools did. And I think he realizes he screwed up. I would not fire Dave Aranda because he just had the best season in school history 2 years ago. He didn't just go brain dead all of a sudden. They need to spend money on NIL and start getting some good transfers and you've got to get offensive linemen. If you don't have offensive linemen, you're spinning your wheels. UT gives every lineman $50,000 a year as long as they're on scholarship. And I'm not saying Baylor can do that, although Baylor people got money, but you got to have a plan and you got to follow it till it comes to fruition.
All right, man. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Check
Have a
'em,
great
guys.
Thanksgiving.
Check 'em, Bears.
Happy Thanksgiving. John McClain, Hall of Famer, with us on Tuesdays at 5:30.
Yeah, I
Appreciate him.
definitely get that sentiment about Aranda. The one thing I'd say about the offensive line is guess what everybody else is wanting to go to do right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Get
Jump in the
offensive
portal
line.
and grab linemen on offense and defense. So, that's easier said than done, no matter what kind of money you have. But he's right though. Like I don't think Aranda's a dumb coach, but I when he was talking about Powledge, and I like Powledge, but when he was talking about him in your interview, like that's a problem. that's a problem. And and then the offense that they run, if you don't have those linemen, that's a problem. And so how do you fix this? Because to fix it is going to take some monumental work, in my opinion. And so, we'll see if he gets tasked with that or not.
They have to reevaluate how they're picking personnel. And like that's the thing. Like,
Could it also be, with all due respect, who's picking the personnel?
yeah, I mean
It could be anything at this point.
But like that's where it is because you've seen the system work with other players, and it's not a system that the wide zone is used all over football. It's not like one that's out of date like the wishbone. So if you have the guys, that's the thing. That's the question is, do you have the right people picking personnel? Do you feel like the right head guy picking personnel? Well, how can he get people to pick better personnel for him too? Because it's not just all on him.
Yep. When we